Every Final Fantasy Tactics fan knows Yasumi Matsuno. What most don't know is that before FFT, he was working at a 15-person studio that bet everything on one man's vacation, and lost him the moment the game shipped. The studio was called Quest. In 1989, it had existed for exactly 1 year, spun off from a company called BothTech. Their one and only product was a contract strategy title for the Famicom, nothing else. That's the year Matsuno walked through their door. He had dropped out of Hosei University after 3 years studying foreign policy and was working as an economics journalist. But what really mattered was that he was a Queen superfan. The band Queen. In his spare time, he had written an 8-chapter fantasy novel titled Ogre Battle Saga, named after the Queen song. He told the company president, "I want to turn this into a game." The president said yes. Quest had nothing else going on, and Matsuno's apartment happened to be near the office. March 1993. Ogre Battle, the March of the Black Queen launches on the Super Famicom. Real-time strategy fused with a party-based RPG. Nobody had attempted this before. 400,000 copies in 3 months. Famitsu gave it a Gold Hall of Fame award for a no-name 15-person studio in this era. This was a miracle. The president was thrilled. He gave Matsuno a long paid vacation, recharge, then come back and make the sequel. But Matsuno didn't go on vacation. He stayed home and watched the news. The early 90s were ugly. The Cold War had just ended. International news was wall-to-wall conflict footage, ordinary families being torn apart on their own doorsteps. Ordinary people losing their homes inside their own villages. Every day, every headline. Matsuno watched these images for months. When he came back to the office, he did something nobody expected. The sequel script was already written. He threw it all out. He said the old story was too light, elves, demons, heroes saving princesses, compared to the things he had just seen on the news. None of it could carry any weight. So the new world became something closer to a medieval Roman Empire. The themes shifted. No more hero versus demon lord. Political intrigue. The impossible moral math of people caught inside a war. He even changed the subtitle. The earliest working name was Somebody to Love. The final version became Let Us Cling Together. Both Queen songs. This guy, even his game titles, had to come out of his record collection. Then he rebuilt the combat system from scratch. The real-time pace of the first game didn't give players time to stop and reflect. Matsuno argued he wanted turn-based tactics, inspired by chess. But not just another tactics game. He wanted players to make choices at every step, not just tactical choices, moral ones. Sacrifice innocence to win the map, betray a friend who'd switched sides. Each answer forked the story. There was no canonical ending. What Matsuno was building was not a chessboard, it was a mirror. Early 1994, development officially starts. Quest throws almost every employee at the project, including staff borrowed from their subsidiary. 16 people. 2.5 years. There's a funny art side story. Akihiko Yoshida did character art and scenes. Matsuno pointed at Kevin Costner in the movie The Untouchables and told Yoshida to model a character named Lancelot after him. Yoshida ignored him and drew his own version. Matsuno looked at it and accepted it. The tech side was even crazier. The team built a custom engine called Hermit that pulled 3D terrain effects out of the Super Famicom's pitiful memory. Walking and running were the only animations that could stay loaded at all times. Everything else streamed in on demand. Frame by frame, byte by byte. The result in 1995 was stunning. October 6, 1995. Tactics Ogre. Let Us Cling Together launches on the Super Famicom. 500,000 copies out the door in Japan. Here's the part that still matters. Famitsu ran a reader-voted Super Famicom rankings list. From the day Tactics Ogre appeared on that list, it never dropped off. 7 consecutive years in the top 10. In 2006, Famitsu ran an all-time greatest 100 games poll. Tactics Ogre landed at number 7. A game made by 15 people at a no-name studio. Number 7. Sitting above most of the big-budget classics you can name. Except by the time the game launched, the people who made it were already gone. The day the master disc was signed off, Matsuno quit. He and Quest's executives had been at war over the company's direction for months. What really destroyed Quest was that he didn't leave alone. Hiroshi Minagawa left with him. Yoshida left with him. The entire core team walked out the door and straight into Square. Imagine that scene. Your game finally hits shelves. Every person who shaped it is already in someone else's office. 2.5 years of talent you built up gone overnight. Hironobu Sakaguchi had played the Ogre series. He said something to the effect of, "I cannot believe work of this caliber came out of a studio that small." When Matsuno arrived at Square, Sakaguchi handed him a blank check. Make a tactics game under the Final Fantasy brand. 1997 Final Fantasy Tactics ships, 1.24 million in Japan, over 2.4 million worldwide. The best-selling SRPG ever made at the time. Sakaguchi publicly called Matsuno a genius and promoted him to division head. And Quest, soul gone, skeleton scattered, just a shell. They released 2 more spin-offs, but Quest without Matsuno was a chessboard with no players. Every move felt off. 2002. Square acquired what was left of Quest. Quest was officially dissolved. The characters Matsuno had created with his own hands ended up living under the same roof as him again. But the company where they were born no longer existed. Here's the brutal punchline. Matsuno didn't fare much better at the big company. He left Final Fantasy XII mid-development, officially due to illness. Some say physical, some say mental. A man who could control every pixel in a 15-person team discovered he could control nothing in a project of hundreds. The plot of his own career read exactly like one of the games he wrote. 2022. Tactics, Ogre Reborn launches, 27 years after the original. Matsuno personally revised the script and sat in on every line of Japanese voice recording. 27 years earlier, in his 20s, he had watched those images on his own television. 27 years later, in his 50s, he was telling the same story again. It had not aged a day. Because the world had not changed either. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.